For the first year of our contract marriage, she treated me like a ghost. But I played my part, the dutiful husband, making sure there was always a warm meal waiting for her. Then my childhood friend came back to town, and we went out. Once, that night, she cornered me outside my bedroom door. Her eyes burned with a terrifying fire I'd never seen before. "You are mine." That's when I learned that beneath the glacier, there was a volcano. My marriage to Isabella Sterling was a business arrangement. It was all there in black and white, spelled out in a prenuptial agreement thicker than a phone book. The term was for 3 years. She provided the money. I provided the legal status of husband. It was a mutually beneficial transaction. No strings attached. I needed the money for my mom's surgery. She needed a marriage to silence her family's meddling and solidify her position as the new CEO of Sterling Enterprises. The day we went to the courthouse, she picked me up herself. She wore a black power suit that seemed to radiate its own cold front. Everything about her screamed off limits. She handed me the agreement and a pen. "Read the terms. If you have no objections, sign." Her voice was clipped, professional. "1 year from today, assuming our arrangement is satisfactory, I will advance the full cost of your mother's medical expenses." I nodded and signed my name. She took the papers back, her eyes scanning my signature with the same detached interest she might give a stock ticker. "Get in, Mr. Carter. We have an appointment at City Hall." And just like that, I became Leo Carter, husband to Isabella Sterling, a name hanging on an ice queen. Isabella was a machine. Her world revolved around one thing: the company. The sprawling penthouse apartment she called home felt less like a home and more like a high-end furniture showroom, sterile and silent, without a trace of life. The day I moved in, she laid down the law. "The master suite at the east end of the second floor is mine. You will not enter without my permission. The other rooms are at your disposal. Maintain a quiet environment. Do not disturb me. On occasion, your presence will be required at certain functions. I will provide you with advance notice." I stood there with my single duffel bag and nodded. My room was at the opposite end of the hall from hers. It felt less like a hallway and more like a canyon. I knew my place. I was an actor, paid to perform a role, play the part of her husband, get the money, and fix my mom. That was the entire script. So I tried to make myself invisible. But she had a terrible stomach. I figured it out after a few days of observation. She'd work so hard she'd forget to eat, or just down a cup of black coffee and call a meal. Then, in the middle of the night, the pain would hit, leaving her pale and drawn. It wasn't in the contract, but I started cooking for her anyway. The first morning, I made simple oatmeal and a soft-boiled egg. When she came downstairs, she stopped short, staring at the table setting. "What is this?" "Breakfast," I said. "Drinking coffee on an empty stomach is bad for you." She didn't say anything. She just looked at me for a few long seconds before sitting down. She ate slowly, silently. When she was finished, she wiped her mouth with a napkin. "Thank you. That won't be necessary in the future." But when she came down the next morning, and the one after that, a warm breakfast was still waiting, and she silently ate it. Breakfast soon became dinner. No matter how late she worked, there would always be soup and a plate of food waiting for her, warm in the oven. I learned to make different things I thought might help: homemade chicken soup, bone broth, simple vegetable stews. She never said a word, but she always finished every last bite. The cold, pristine kitchen finally started to feel lived in, smelling of garlic and thyme. One night, I heard a noise from her room. After hesitating, I went to the kitchen, warmed a glass of milk, grabbed some stomach medicine, and knocked on her door. When she opened it, she was pale, clutching her stomach, a sheen of cold sweat on her forehead. I held out the milk and the pills. She stared at me, then took them. "Thank you." After that night, she never said, "That won't be necessary again." Life fell into a strange rhythm. I cooked for her and reminded her to eat. She was still impossibly busy and rarely home for meals, but she started texting me, "Won't be back for dinner tonight," or "Late night, don't wait up." We barely spoke, but a weird kind of understanding grew between us. She stopped looking at me like I was a piece of furniture. Occasionally, I'd see a flicker of something in her eyes, something that almost resembled warmth. Like on my birthday, I just made myself a bowl of pasta, not telling her a thing. She came home late that night, but pulled a small, perfect-looking cake out of her briefcase and set it on the counter. My assistant bought an extra one. Her voice was as cool as ever, and she wouldn't look at me. But I saw the tips of her ears turn a faint, telltale shade of pink. The cake was obviously from a high-end bakery, the kind you have to order weeks in advance. No way it was an extra. I ate it. It was sweet. About 6 months into the arrangement, she needed my cooperation for the first time. A family gala. She told me a day ahead to get ready. The next day, she took me shopping, bought me an expensive suit, and picked out a tie herself. At the party, she did something that shocked me. She took my arm. Her fingers were cool against the sleeve of my suit. I'm not built for these kinds of events, but I did my best to play along. She introduced me to the relatives who were sizing me up. "This is my husband, Leo." Her tone was natural, almost soft. When someone made a snide comment about me marrying up, she deflected it without missing a beat, her hand tightening on my arm, as if to say, "Don't listen to them." On the way home, she sat silently in the car, staring out the window at the city lights. Then out of nowhere, she said, "You did well tonight." I didn't answer. A strange feeling was settling in my gut. This felt like it was going way beyond the boundaries of our agreement. But I didn't hate it. The changes were subtle. I started to notice her looking at me for longer periods. I'd glance up from a book and catch her eye. She wouldn't look away immediately, just give a slow nod before returning to her work. She started remembering things, like that I hated cilantro. One time I accidentally put some in a dish, and I saw her picking it out piece by piece. She gave me a supplementary credit card. "For household expenses," she said. "Groceries, or if you want to buy something for yourself." I never used it for myself. That was her money, not mine to spend. But the books she left on the coffee table, I'd sometimes pick them up. After she noticed, the ones I seemed interested in would mysteriously find their way to a spot on the table closer to my side of the couch. We even started spending Saturday mornings in the living room, sitting on opposite ends of the sofa, reading in comfortable silence. The sunlight would stream through the floor-to-ceiling windows, and where it hit her, the hard lines of her profile would soften. In those moments, I'd sometimes forget. It almost felt like we were a real couple. But I knew it wasn't real. A contract stood between us. A clock was ticking. I had to keep reminding myself of that. Until Chloe came back. Chloe Davis was my childhood friend. We grew up on the same block. Her family moved away when we were teens, and we lost touch. Then, out of the blue, she was back in Chicago and calling me. "Leo, I'm back. You have to let me take you out to dinner." Her voice on the phone was just as full of energy as I remembered. I hesitated. I glanced at the calendar. It was a Saturday. I seemed to recall Isabella saying she had to work. I agreed. "Sure, you pick the place." I told Isabella about it. "A friend of mine is back in town. We're going to grab dinner tomorrow." She was scrolling through financial reports on her iPad and didn't even look up. She's a woman," I added. "We grew up together." The fingers swiping across the screen paused for a fraction of a second. She lifted her head and looked at me. There was no warmth in her eyes. "Go. Do you need the car?" "No, I'll just take the L." She looked back down at her iPad and said nothing more. I thought that was the end of it. The next day, I dressed and headed out. Seeing Chloe was great. We laughed about stupid things we did as kids and caught up on the last decade. She was sad to hear about my mom. "If you need anything at all, you have to promise you'll call me." She was still the same big-hearted person. We ate, then went for a walk along the lakefront trail. At one point, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Isabella. "When will you be back?" I texted back, probably before dinner. She didn't reply. Around 4, I put Chloe in an Uber and started heading home myself. I just got into the train station entrance when my phone rang. It was Isabella. Her voice coming through the speaker was colder than usual, tight with some strange, suppressed emotion. "Where are you?" "At the station. On my way home. Send me your location. And don't move." "What's wrong? I can just take the train." "Wait for me." She repeated the words, then hung up. It wasn't a request. I was confused, but I sent her my location. Less than 15 minutes later, her black Bentley pulled up to the curb. The tinted window slid down. She was wearing sunglasses, so I couldn't see her eyes, but her mouth was set in a hard, thin line. "Get in." I opened the door and slid into the passenger seat. The pressure inside the car was suffocating. She didn't say a word as she pulled away from the curb, accelerating smoothly, but with a terrifying silence that made my skin crawl. I tried to break the tension. "What are you doing here? Did you finish up at the office?" She didn't answer. We were almost home when she finally spoke. Did you have fun? Her voice was flat, devoid of any inflection. I couldn't read her, so I just answered honestly. It was fine. We had lunch, took a walk. Your childhood friend? Yeah, we hadn't seen each other in a long time. Silence again. The car glided into the underground garage and came to a stop. She unbuckled her seatbelt, but didn't get out. Instead, she turned to face me. Even with the sunglasses on, I could feel her stare like two shards of ice. Leo, remember who you are. A rock dropped in my stomach. I haven't forgotten. You are Isabella Sterling's husband, she said, each word a perfectly enunciated drop of venom. Legally, yes, I replied, a little annoyed. But it's just an agreement. She leaned across the console, suddenly invading my space. A wave of her cold, expensive perfume and an overwhelming sense of intimidation washed over me. She took off her sunglasses. Her eyes, usually so calm and clear, were churning with a dark, violent emotion I couldn't name. Does the agreement include you going on dates with other women, taking walks, laughing with them? Her voice was a low growl, forced through gritted teeth. I was stunned. I never expected this. Chloe is just a friend. A friend. She let out a short, mirthless laugh. You say her name so easily. She reached out, her fingertips icy cold, and traced a slow line along my jaw. The gesture was possessive, terrifying. Leo, you belong to me. At least, for the duration of this contract, you do. And I don't like other people touching my things. Looking at them is not allowed either. The raw paranoia in her eyes scared me. This wasn't the composed, self-assured CEO I knew. Isabella, I started to say, shrinking back in my seat. My movement seemed to trigger something in her. Her eyes darkened, and she suddenly grabbed my chin, her grip surprisingly strong. Why are you pulling away? You were doing so well before. Cooking for me, bringing me medicine, being my escort. Wasn't that the point? To make me get used to you? To make me care? Well, congratulations. It worked. So stop doing things that displease me. She was so close I could feel her breath on my face. My back was pressed hard against the leather seat. There was nowhere to run. I was just fulfilling the contract. My explanation was pathetic. She wasn't listening. Fulfilling the contract? She stared at my lips, her eyes dangerous. Then how about you fulfill a husband's real duties right now? My pupils contracted. Her mouth was on mine. It wasn't a kiss. It was a punishment, a brand. Forceful, demanding, and utterly overwhelming. It was both ice and fire. I froze, my mind completely blank. All I could feel was the bruising force of her lips and the tidal wave of insane possessiveness pouring off her. This was wrong. Terrifyingly wrong. This wasn't the ice queen I knew. It was like a switch had been flipped, revealing a paranoid stranger. After a long moment, she pulled back. My lips throbbed. They had to be swollen. My heart was hammering against my ribs from fear or something else. I couldn't tell. She was breathing heavily, the madness in her eyes receding slightly, but the deep, dark current remained. She traced a finger over the corner of my mouth, a gesture of unsettling tenderness. Do you understand now? Her voice was a raw whisper. You're mine. I stared at her, unable to speak. She reached over and unbuckled my seatbelt. Her voice regained some of its usual cool control, but the undertone was still there. Get out of the car. We're eating at home tonight. You're cooking. Then she got out and walked toward the elevator without a backward glance. I sat in the car for a long time, just breathing, trying to get my heart rate back to normal. The stinging on my lips was a constant reminder of what had just happened. It wasn't a dream. Something was very wrong with Isabella Sterling. And I had a sinking feeling that going out with Chloe had just opened a very dangerous Pandora's box. After that night, everything was different, yet nothing had changed. She still left early and came home late, buried in her work. I still cooked, and she would either come home to eat or I'd have it sent to her office. But the delicate balance between us was shattered. Her gaze now held something new, a naked, assessing possessiveness. When I was cooking, she would sometimes lean against the doorframe of the kitchen and just watch me, not saying a word, just watching. It made the hairs on my neck stand up. When I'd hand her a bowl of soup, her fingers would accidentally brush against mine. Then she'd look up at me, a thoughtful, calculating expression in her eyes. She started buying me things. Suits, watches, ties, even underwear. All expensive, luxury brands in the minimalist, cold tone style she preferred. She stopped asking my opinion, just had them delivered and left in my room. See if they fit. Your old style doesn't suit you. Get rid of it. One weekend, she had a team of people come to the penthouse and clear out most of my old wardrobe. I was furious. I can still wear those clothes. She just gave me a cool glance. I've decided they're unsuitable. You are Isabella Sterling's husband now. Your appearance must align with my standards. She walked over to me and adjusted the collar of my new shirt, her fingers brushing slowly, deliberately across my collarbone. You'll get used to it. Her voice was quiet, but it was an order, not a suggestion. I suddenly realized that her loss of control in the car wasn't a one-time thing. It was just the beginning. She was systematically, relentlessly pulling me into her world, remaking me from the outside in. She started encroaching more and more on my life. I used to spend afternoons at a little indie bookstore. The first time she realized I wasn't home, she called. Where are you? The question was calm, but I could hear the tension underneath. I told her the name of the store. Half an hour later, her Bentley pulled up outside. She walked in, her eyes scanning the small, cozy shop with a slight frown. She came over to me and glanced at the book in my hands. We have better books than this in the library at home. I like the atmosphere here. I started to explain. We're leaving. She cut me off, putting the book down and taking my wrist. If there's a book you want, I'll buy it for you. She pulled me out of the store without another word. Once we were in a car, she said, don't go to places like that anymore. Why? I don't like it. She stared straight ahead, her profile like carved stone. I don't like you being in places I'm not familiar with. Places I can't control. My heart sank. This was becoming a sick, twisted form of ownership. Another time, the owner of the coffee shop where I used to work called. He was short-staffed and asked if I could help out for a few hours. Figuring I had nothing else to do, I agreed. As evening approached, the shop door opened. Isabella walked in, dressed in a couture suit and heels. She was completely out of place in the warm, humble cafe. Every customer turned to stare. She walked directly to the counter, her eyes landing on the apron I was wearing, and her gaze turned glacial. Come home with me. Just let me finish up here. Now. She repeated the word, her voice low but carrying an immense weight. The owner saw what was happening and hurried over. Leo, you can go. It's fine, I've got it. I had no choice but to untie my apron and follow her out. The ride home was silent. The second we were inside, she backed me against the door. Do you need money? No. Then why were you working in a place like that? I was just helping out a friend. The only person you need to help is me. She raised a hand and wiped my cheek, where a smudge of coffee grounds must have been. You are my husband. You don't serve other people. Isabella, can you please be reasonable? I felt helpless. Reasonable. She tilted her head, a look of almost childlike cruelty in her eyes. Leo, you are my reason now. I was suffocating. She was a net, closing silently around me. My every move seemed to be under her surveillance. I tried to talk to her. Isabella, this is just a contract. What you're doing is. She was reading a book and didn't look up. Clause 1 of the agreement states that we are to maintain the public image of a loving couple. You're frequenting these establishments and associating with individuals unknown to me is a breach of that clause. She always had an airtight, logical-sounding excuse. I was beginning to suspect the contract itself was a trap from the very beginning. A trap designed to slowly cede every part of my life to her control. Chloe tried to get in touch a few more times. I didn't dare meet her. I barely even answered her calls. Isabella's reaction had been too terrifying. I didn't want to provoke her again. Besides, I had a creeping suspicion she knew every time Chloe and I communicated. One afternoon, Chloe called while I was cooking. Isabella was sitting in the living room. She glanced at my phone screen on the counter. Then, in a perfectly casual voice, she said, "Your phone is ringing. I think it's that Chloe person. Do you want me to bring it to you?" Her tone was placid, but her eyes were like daggers. A chill went down my spine. "No, it's fine. I'll call her back later." She didn't say anything else. But when I went to call Chloe back, I saw the call had been ended. And there was a new text on the screen from Chloe. "Leo, are you okay? Was it your wife who just answered?" Her voice was really scary. My blood ran cold. She had answered my phone. I turned and looked into the living room. Isabella was elegantly turning a page in her book, as if nothing had happened. In the soft lamplight, her profile was perfect and frigid. like a beautiful, exquisitely crafted doll, inhabited by a crazed soul. In that moment, I knew the glacier hadn't just melted. It had become a raging, black flood, threatening to swallow everything. I started walking on eggshells. I stayed home as much as possible, cutting off contact with anyone who might be seen as a threat. Her possessiveness seemed to be temporarily sated. She became almost normal. She'd come home for dinner on time. She'd ask for updates on my mother's condition. Once, she even offered, "Should we move your mother to a better hospital? I can arrange it." I refused. "That's not necessary right now, but thank you." She looked at me for a long moment, then dropped it. A strange, eerie peace settled over the penthouse. But I knew the madness was still there, churning just beneath the surface. All it needed was a trigger. One day, an old college buddy of mine, Mark, was in town for a conference and asked to meet up. He was a guy, a normal, happily married guy. I figured that had to be safe. I told Isabella. She was on a video call at the time and just gave me a distracted nod. "Fine, don't be too late." I breathed a sigh of relief. It was great seeing Mark. We had a few beers, laughed about our stupid college antics. My phone lit up once. A text from Isabella. "What time will you be back?" I replied, "Home before 10 for sure." She sent back a single letter. "Okay." At 9:30, I said goodbye to Mark and was waiting for an Uber when a familiar black Bentley slid silently to the curb beside me. The back window lowered, revealing Isabella's expressionless face. "Get in." She was here again. My heart leaped into my throat. The car was thick with tension. I could smell alcohol on her, mingled with her signature cold perfume. She must have just come from some work event. "Have fun?" she asked, her voice unreadable. "Yeah, just catching up with an old friend," I answered cautiously. "What did you talk about that was so entertaining?" She turned her head to look at me. The passing streetlights cast shifting shadows across her face. Her eyes were bright, analytical. "Just stupid stuff from college." "Oh." She gave a slight smile. "More fun than being with me?" It was a loaded question. I had no idea how to answer. My silence clearly wasn't the right response. She suddenly reached out and grabbed my wrist. Her fingers were hot, a stark contrast to their usual coolness. "Leo, I don't feel well." Her voice was husky, tinged with a vulnerability I had never heard before. But instead of reassuring me, it set off alarm bells. This was not a tone she ever used. It was more frightening than her anger. "Where? Is it your stomach?" "The medicine is..." I tried to pull my hand away to look for her pills. She held on tight. "It's not my stomach." She pulled my hand to her chest, pressing it flat against the thin silk of her blouse. I could feel the frantic, heavy beat of her heart, the heat of her skin. "It hurts here." She looked me dead in the eye. "When I see you smile at someone else, it hurts here. When I hear you laughing with someone else, it hurts here. Tell me, Leo, why is that?" Her grip was bruising my wrist. Her gaze was obsessive, demanding an answer I didn't have. My throat was dry. The driver stared straight ahead, as if he were deaf and blind. The car felt like it was shrinking around me. "Speak," she commanded, her fingers tightening. "Isabella, you've been drinking," I managed to say. "I've had a drink, but I'm not drunk." She leaned closer, her breath a mix of wine and perfume, trapping me. "Answer me." I don't know." She stared at me for a long time, then abruptly let go and leaned back against the seat. She closed her eyes and rubbed her temples, her expression reverting to one of cold exhaustion. "Fine. You don't have to know. You just have to remember. You are mine. From the inside out. Every single hair on your head is mine. Don't make me remind you again." She fell silent, looking as though she'd fallen asleep. But the suffocating sense of being owned hadn't lessened. It had only intensified, wrapping around me like a shroud. When we got home, she did seem unsteady on her feet. I instinctively reached out to steady her. She didn't push me away. Instead, she leaned her weight against me. I helped her upstairs and into her bedroom. It was my first time inside her private space. The room was huge, decorated in a severe, minimalist style, all blacks, grays, and whites. It was as cold and impersonal as I had imagined. I helped her to the bed and was about to turn to get her a glass of water when she suddenly grabbed the hem of my shirt. "Don't go." Her voice was soft, laced with a blurry, childlike dependence. I froze. Her eyes were half open, her gaze hazy, stripped of its usual sharpness. "Leo, She whispered my name. Yeah, I'm here. I answer, my mind racing. My head hurts. She murmured, frowning like a petulant child. I'll get you some aspirin and water. I tried to gently pry her fingers from my shirt. She only gripped it tighter and pulled. I lost my balance and stumbled, landing on the edge of the bed beside her. She took the opportunity to lean into me, resting her forehead against my side. Don't move, just for a minute. Her warm breath seeped through my shirt, making my skin tingle. I sat rigid, not daring to move. She was quiet against me, seemingly asleep again. The only sounds in the vast room were our breathing. The air was thick with the smell of wine and her perfume, and a dangerous kind of intimacy. I had no idea what to do. She seemed so fragile, so needy. But this could just be another trap. I didn't know which Isabella was real. The ruthless CEO, or this vulnerable, drunken woman? Or were they both one and the same? As I was thinking, she spoke again, her voice a near inaudible whisper. Leo, don't leave me. My heart seized. And don't look at anyone else. Just look at me, okay? Her voice held a pleading note I had never heard from her before. I looked down and could only see the crown of her dark hair, her shoulders trembling slightly. In that moment, the contract, the money, none of it seemed to matter. A part of me, a part one didn't know existed, just broke. On pure instinct, I raised my hand and gently placed it on her head. Her hair was softer than I imagined, like silk. I felt her flinch, then lean into my touch even more, like a ship finding its harbor. But a second later, a jolt of alarm went through me. What was I doing? This was a contract. When she sobered up, she wouldn't remember any of this. Or worse, she'd be disgusted by my presumption. I carefully shifted my weight, laying her down flat on the bed and pulling the comforter over her. She mumbled something but didn't wake. I stood by the bed for a long moment, watching her sleep, my emotions a tangled mess. Then I fled her room like it was on fire. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, I was up making breakfast as usual, my stomach in knots, unsure how I was going to face her. When she came downstairs, she was perfectly composed. The impeccable suit, the flawless makeup, the cool, distant gaze. It was as if last night's vulnerable woman had been a figment of my imagination. She sat and ate her breakfast in silence, not even glancing in my direction. I was relieved, but also strangely disappointed. Of course, she didn't remember, or chose not to. Better this way. Just as I was thinking that, she spoke, her voice level. Thank you for last night. My hand, reaching for a glass, froze. It was nothing. She looked up, her eyes pinning me with an analytical stare. I didn't say anything inappropriate, did I? My heart skipped a beat. No, you just said you had a headache, and then you fell asleep. I looked down, avoiding her gaze. Is that so? She replied softly, her tone unreadable. She finished her breakfast, wiped her mouth, and stood up. As she passed me, she paused. Leo. Yes. I have a very high tolerance for alcohol. I almost never get drunk. She let that statement hang in the air, gave me one last, meaningful look, and then walked out. I stood frozen in the kitchen, a chill spreading through my entire body. She almost never gets drunk. Then last night, she was faking it? The vulnerability, the dependence, the whispered pleas. Was it all an act? Why? To test me? Or was it to make me fall for her? I watched her car pull away from the curb, and for the first time, I felt a certainty deep in my bones. I was never going to get away. From that day on, our relationship entered a new, more dangerous phase. She dialed back the overt, suffocating control. Instead, she became unpredictable. She still ate the food I made, but now she'd find fault. The soup is too salty. Or, I don't want this tomorrow. She still required me to attend events with her, but she stopped taking my arm. She would maintain a small, professional distance, but her eyes would follow me everywhere I went. A silent claim. She started taking calls from her various suitors in front of me. Her tone would be dismissive, but she wouldn't hang up right away. Sometimes she would even agree to a lunch meeting, strictly business of course, while watching me out of the corner of her eye. I tried to keep my face a blank mask. I knew this was another test. A game. A cruel game that she seemed to enjoy. But I had to admit, when I heard her calmly making plans with another man, my stomach would twist. A tiny, sharp pinprick of something. I told myself it was normal. Even roommates get possessive after a while, let alone a legal spouse. But the feeling grew stronger. I was becoming more and more aware of her. Was she eating on time? What time did she get home? Did she smell faintly of someone else's cologne? This was dangerous. I had to constantly remind myself. This is a transaction. It has an expiration date. Don't get pulled in. Especially not by Isabella Sterling, a woman whose motives were a mystery and whose heart might be a barren wasteland. Chloe still texted me occasionally. I kept my replies short and infrequent. I didn't want any more trouble. But trouble found me anyway. Chloe somehow heard that my mom's condition had worsened. She managed to find out which hospital she was in and went to visit her. My mom, who adored Chloe, was thrilled. When she called me, her voice was brighter than it had been in months. That Chloe is such a sweet girl, remembering your old mom, bringing all these wonderful gifts. Leo, you and Chloe. I cut her off. Mom, Chloe and I are just friends. Don't get any ideas. All right, friends are good too. You should keep in touch. After I hung up, I had a headache. Sure enough, when Isabella came home that night, her face was like a thundercloud. She tossed her phone onto the coffee table in front of me. The screen showed several photos sent from an anonymous number. In the pictures, Chloe was sitting by my mom's hospital bed, peeling an apple, the two of them chatting and smiling. In another, my mom was holding Chloe's hand, beaming. The angle was intentionally framed to make them look intimate, like a mother and her beloved daughter-in-law. All the blood drained from my face. What is this? I looked up at her. She stood over me, her eyes like chips of ice. That's what I should be asking you. Having a lovely family reunion, are we? Am I in the way? Her voice was dangerously quiet. Chloe just went to see my mom. I didn't know she was going to. You didn't know? She sneered. How did she find the hospital? The room number? Your mother seems to like her very much. She picked up the phone, her gaze dark as she stared at the photo, holding her hand, smiling so happily. She's never smiled at me like that. I was stunned. She sounded jealous. Isabella, we have a contract. The contract requires you to protect my reputation. Her voice suddenly rose, her eyes flashing with fury. Now some other woman is playing the part of the doting daughter-in-law, while I, your actual wife, am kept completely in the dark. If these pictures get out, what will people think of me? You're making me a laughingstock. She advanced on me, backing me against the wall. Are you that eager for her to take my place, Leo? As soon as this contract is up, are you going to divorce me and marry her? Her accusations were wild, irrational. No, that's not going to happen. Prove it. She stared in my eyes. How? Make her disappear. Tell her to never see you or your mother again. The demand was insane. Isabella, that's not reasonable. She's just. My defiance enraged her. She shot her hand out and grabbed my chin, her grip so tight I thought the bone might crack. Reasonable? My reason, Leo, is that I forbid it. You are mine. No one touches you, and no one even thinks about touching you. Not even your mother. Her eyes were blazing with a terrifying, paranoid fire. And looking at her, I suddenly understood. She was the one who had these pictures taken. Maybe she had even orchestrated the visit itself. This was just the excuse she needed. The excuse to finally, completely lock me down. She didn't need a reason. She just needed my total surrender. We didn't speak for the rest of the night. I locked myself in my room. The next day, I realized just how far she was willing to go. My phone started acting strangely. I suspect it was bugged. It would lose signal at random times, especially when Chloe or my mom tried to call. Then I found I couldn't leave the penthouse. The driver was always unavailable. When I tried to walk out, a security guard would politely intercept me. Ms. Sterling's orders, sir. For your safety, we're asking that you minimize unnecessary trips outside. Even groceries were now being delivered. I tried to contact Chloe to tell her to stay away, but my texts wouldn't go through. My calls wouldn't connect. I couldn't even get through to my mother. The nurses at the hospital would only say that she was stable but resting and couldn't come to the phone. I was completely cut off, a prisoner in a gilded cage. I stormed into her home office to confront her. She was in the middle of a video conference. I threw the door open. She held up a hand to the camera, said, "Pause this meeting," and muted her microphone. She looked up at me, her face a mask of calm. Yes. Isabella, what is this? Am I under house arrest? I'm protecting you, she corrected smoothly. There have been some potential security threats. It's a temporary precaution. And my phone? Why can't I call anyone? Must be a network issue. I'll have IT take a look at it. She was a flawless liar. And my mom? Why can't I speak to her? She needs a rest. Constant phone calls are not conducive to recovery. I am doing all of this for your own good, Leo. For my good. I laughed, a bitter, angry sound. You're doing this to feed your obsession with control. Her eyes hardened. Think what you will. Now, go back to your room. Well, I'm finished here. If you still wish to talk, we can have a proper talk. The way she said the last word was a clear threat. I stared at her, this complete stranger, and my heart felt like a block of ice. I turned and left. Arguing was pointless. She had made up her mind. I was her property now, until the contract ended. Or maybe forever. The days that followed were a blur of silent tension. The staff were polite, but firm. I was a prisoner. Isabella came and went as she pleased, sometimes speaking to me as if nothing was wrong. Her gaze held a chilling certainty. I was hers, and there was no escape. I stopped talking to her. The silent treatment was my only weapon. She didn't seem to mind. She seemed to enjoy having me there, a captive audience to her silent reign. One night, she came home very late, reeking of expensive wine. She came straight to my room. I was getting ready for bed and sat up, instantly on guard. Get out. She ignored me, walking to the edge of my bed and sitting down. Her eyes were hazy from the alcohol, but the obsessive gleam was still there. Still angry, she asked, her voice raspy. I turned my head away. She reached out to touch my face. I flinched away. Her hand froze in midair, and her expression darkened. Do you hate me that much, Leo? I don't hate you, Ms. Sterling, I said coldly. I just hate being treated like a pet. I'm not. Not what? I cut her off. Not loving me in your own twisted way. The word hung in the air between us. I was as shocked as she was that I'd said it. A strange, heavy silence fell over the room. That one word was a bomb. After a long moment, she spoke, her voice as soft as falling snow. And what if? I am. My heart hammered against my ribs. I looked at her, truly looked at her. Her eyes were a swirling vortex of emotions, possessiveness, madness, fear, and a raw, aching pain I had never seen before. Do you have any idea what you're saying? My voice was a dry croak. A strange, self-mocking smile touched her lips. Oh yes, I know exactly what I'm saying. She leaned over me, her scent, her presence enveloping me. So don't ever talk about leaving again, and don't ever let me see you with anyone else. I can't handle it. Her fingers brushed against my cheek, hot against my skin. I will literally go insane. In that moment, the only thing I could hear was the frantic, wild beating of my own heart. It was beating for the terrifying, naked confession in her words, and for the treacherous, unwelcome flutter of something in my own chest. This was dangerous. So dangerous. I was staring into the abyss of her eyes, and I could feel myself being pulled in. Her confession was a stone dropped into the deep, still waters of my resolve, and the ripples were turning into tidal waves. All of her paranoia, her suffocating control, it was all a clumsy, violent expression of that one terrifying word. I looked at her, so close to me now, drunk, powerful, and fragile all at once. Every wall she had was down, leaving nothing but raw, desperate need. The wall I had built around my own heart, the one that screamed this is just a job, crumbled into dust. All that was left was a confusing mix of frustration, a flicker of feeling, and an overwhelming surge of pity. I sighed, the sound loud in the quiet room. Isabella, I said, my voice hoarse. You know, you're completely impossible. Her eyes clouded over as if I'd just condemned her, her long lashes trembling as she looked down. The hand gripping my sleeve tightened. Yes, she whispered, her voice thick. I know. You locked me up. You cut me off from my family. You threatened me. Yes. You kissed me against my will. I'm sorry, she breathed, the words barely audible. Seeing her like this, so uncharacteristically broken, the last of my anger evaporated. A mischievous thought, a crazy impulse, sparked in my mind. It was a way out of the standoff, a real one. I reached out and gently tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet my eyes. Her eyes were red-rimmed, as if I were the one who had hurt her. You want me to forgive you? I asked. She nodded immediately, a flicker of desperate hope in her gaze. Then you have to show me, I said, my expression serious. Kiss me, and then I'll think about it. The words were out before I could stop them. My face fell hot. This wasn't me. She stared at me, her drunken haze seeming to clear for a moment as she processed what I'd said. Then, slowly, a light began to gather in her beautiful eyes, like a sunrise after a long, dark night. It grew brighter and brighter until it was a dazzling explosion. The fear and anxiety fell away from her face, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated joy. She smiled, a real smile, one that reached her eyes and transformed her entire being. It was like watching a glacier melt in seconds, revealing a field of wildflowers. It was breathtaking. Okay, she whispered, her voice dripping with a tenderness I'd never heard. And then she leaned down and captured my lips. This kiss was nothing like the first one. There was no punishment, no conquest. It was impossibly gentle, a soft, tentative exploration, full of a reverence that stunned me. She traced the shape of my mouth slowly, patiently. The scent of wine and her perfume wrapped around me like a blanket. I didn't pull away. I even, hesitantly, kissed her back. I felt her tremble at my response, and then the kiss deepened. It was no longer a question, but a gentle, sweeping answer. Her arms slid around my waist, pulling me tight against her. The air between us grew hot, our breaths mingling, our heartbeats syncing up. After a long time, she pulled away, resting her forehead against mine. We were both breathing hard. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes shimmering with an ocean of emotion. Was that okay? She asked, her voice a low murmur against my skin. My face was on fire. My heart was trying to beat its way out of my chest. Yeah, it was fine, I mumbled, turning my head, unable to look at her. She wouldn't have it. Her fingers gently guided my face back to hers. Just fine, she teased, a playful light in her eyes. It was good, I admitted, defeated. She smiled again and leaned in to give me another quick, soft kiss. Sealed, she announced, her tone full of a new, happy confidence. You forgave me. No takebacks. We'll see how you behave, I said, trying to sound stern. Okay, she agreed instantly, her eyes sparkling. I'll be on my best behavior. She hugged me again, burying her face in the crook of my neck like a stray animal that had finally found its home. Leo, she said, her voice muffled. I'm sorry, and thank you. Thank you for not giving up on me. I didn't say anything. I just raised my arms and hugged her back. I felt her whole body go still for a second, then melt against me as she held on even tighter. In that moment, suspended in the quiet of the room, all the fear and anger seemed to fade away. There was only the sound of our two hearts beating together as one. End.